Hello dear viewers, it's time again for the news here on Rwanda Television with me, Sarah Shinhori. I'll be sitting in for Sam Kalisa for this edition. Let us begin with the headlines. The 18th National Mushyikirano Council has begun here in Kigali. On Tuesday, Rwanda will be hosting the 69th ACI Africa Regional Conference. African countries are being urged to respect the Vancouver Principles to eradicate the recruitment of child soldiers. And now the details. President Paul Kagame has pointed out that if all leaders and Rwandans in general were to fulfill their responsibilities as they should, Rwanda would become self-reliant and free of the sometimes condescending attitude with which the country is treated by the international community. The head of state made the remarks on Monday as the two-day 18th National Mushyikirano Council began here in Kigali. We have the details. The last Mushyikirano Council took place in 2019 because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and its effects from an economic standpoint have truly been felt. So when you add the consequences of the war in Ukraine, that would have spelled disaster had the proper measures not been taken, and the results continue to show.
Ubu ku munyarwanda ashobora kubaho.
The Rwandan life expectancy is now at 69 years. Do you know how low that figure used to be? You were lucky if you made it to 40. A person who is 69 years old is considered elderly anywhere in the world. Certainly people can and do live to be much older than that, but for us that change in life expectancy is very significant. When you look at some of our achievements through that lens, it becomes much clearer.
Ibikorwa bimwe tuvuga umuntu abishyize muri ubu buryo nibwo byumvikana.
The president also gave assurances that all achievements the country has made will be protected and preserved, but also pointed out that there is still a long way to go.
Simbizi niba hari umunyarwanda wishimira guhora asindagizwa.
I do not know if there is a single Rwandan that enjoys being helped along. Anyone unable, be it because of illness or anything else, is assisted. But for how long are we going to be assisted? The only way to get out of this situation is through action, the sort of action the Prime Minister spoke about. The very things I am telling you now, the way is open. When things are not done the way they should be, then we have the sort of situation that should be unacceptable. And I honestly do not know how any of it can be tolerated. And you let yourselves to be continuously helped along. The only thing that can make you better is if you work. You must also recognize what you are, that you are a human being, just like the people who treat you in such a condescending manner. His Excellency Paul Kagame also addressed the issue of investors being given an unnecessarily hard time when trying to start businesses. Yet for years the country has had measures to avoid just that. How can you make a person run around from place to place? Why don't you address their concerns in one place? The problem is that institutions do not communicate among each other, and neither do their personnel. Even though the IT infrastructure does not operate at the desired capacity, what is the point of having it at all if you do not use it as you should? Why should a person come to see you and then have to go to 3 other locations over the same matter? Yet you are supposed to be fulfilling the responsibilities of a one-stop center, and for 10 years you have nothing to show for it. Why is that? The same people that should be carrying out the implementation of such policies, you are the ones who fail the policies and they don't work. Of course, there are some who want issues to be taken from place to place so that they may become involved. That is what it means. We cannot continue like that.
We can't continue like that.
While interacting with the president, Rwandans living in the diaspora asked him to visit them.
Nyakubahwa Perezida wa Repubulika, Abanyarwanda baba mu mahanga mwarabasuraga mbere
Your Excellency, Mr. President, You used to visit Rwandans living in the diaspora before the pandemic, and we would like the Rwanda Day events to resume, with your permission. It would be nice if the next Rwanda Day were to be held in Africa.
bikaba byarushaho kuba byiza Rwanda Day itaha yabera muri Afurika. Murakoze.
tuzashaka umwanya tubasure.
We will find the time to visit you. It was certainly a good initiative, visiting Rwandans where they live abroad, and useful. We will certainly continue doing it.
tuzabikomeza.
Thousands of people are participating in the National Mushikirano Council, most gathered at the Kigali Convention Center, with others linked from sites in Gicumbi, Kayonza, Rubavu, and Gisagara. Rwandans living in Europe were also able to participate. The council will conclude its activities on Tuesday. Now, as we just heard in that report, the life expectancy here in Rwanda is now 69 years, which is high for anywhere in the world. In the following report, Jessica Gasaro looks into the significance of this and how it was discovered during the 5th population and housing census conducted last year.
The 5th Population and Housing Census conducted in 2022 revealed that Rwandans are 13,246,394 million from 10,515,973 million in the past 10 years, which means that there is an increase of 2,700 million. Among them, women are majority, that equals to 51.5%, while men are 48.5%. This census also showed that there are 3,312,743 million households in Rwanda, which means that each household contains at least 4 people. Of these, above 72.1% live in the rural areas, while 27.9% live in the urban areas. The life expectancy of Rwandan increased from 64.5 years in 2012 to 69.6 years in 2022. The President of the Republic, Paul Kagame, says that it is something to be proud of when it has been 30 years since Rwandan rebuilt their country.
Myaka 30 tumaze, iyo dusubiza amaso inyuma ntituze kubona icyahindutse.
It's been 30 years. If we look back and you can see what has changed, it will be a shame. But if you look at it now, if you look at the fact that a Rwandan can live up to 69 years old, you know where we started from? When someone who reached 40 tried, it was a chance. A Rwandan can reach 69. And this is a very high, not only for a Rwandan, but for the whole world as well. For a Rwandan to live in those years, if you want them to live in safety, the safety I'm talking about is for things and for people.
Some residents talk about some of the things that have been done to make the people live, what needs to be added to the energy. I think things that will help us to live longer would be to avoid alcohol, tobacco, high fat, sugar, eat fruit, vegetables, drink plenty of water, and do sports. The Director General of the National Institute of the Statistics of Rwanda, Murangwa Yusuf, also emphasized that the fact that life expectancy of Rwandan has increased shows that many welfare programs are producing results. Even so, we shouldn't act like all is well and cross our hand. There is still something to be done.
There are many things that have not been achieved. We have seen it in water, in electricity. There is still a lot of work in all sectors. We must not sleep. Something else must be taken care of. Many children have not yet started school. Other children really start late. Like for high school, should start at the age of 12. Otherwise, overcrowdedness in Rwanda is still high, which requires better planning related to housing, which help us in agriculture and environment protection.
Fertility rate among women aged 15 to 49 has decreased from 4 children in the past 10 years to 3 children in 2022. The National Institute of Statistics in Rwanda says that the population of Rwandan housing census aims to show the true number of all Rwandans, where they live and their lifestyle, and these figures are helpful in the planning. Jessica Agasaro, RTV News.
Prime Minister Dr. Edouard Ngirente has confirmed that the measures the government has put in place to revive the economy are working. They include projects to improve the welfare of local residents in different areas of the country. The Prime Minister was speaking at the ongoing 18th National Mshichirano Council and noted that the key sectors for such initiatives include agriculture and animal husbandry, despite the negative effects of climate change. Compared to the previous fiscal year, subsidies to the agricultural sector during this current one have reached 31 billion Rwandan francs. That is an increase of 93%. Farmers are also being assisted to have their crops and animals insured, with the government bearing 40% of the burden, with more than 43,500 cattle now fully insured and an additional 236,000 smaller livestock as well. The Prime Minister also stressed that progress is being made in the education sector, and over the last 4 years, up to 933 kilometers of roads were constructed in the country when it comes to infrastructure development. Now, moving on. The heads of civil airports in Africa have noted that security and safety at airports are one of the pillars of development for the aviation sector on the continent. We have the details with Adams Kwizera.
Airport managing directors in Africa point out that terrorist attacks, wars, epidemics are some of the reasons encountered as the contribution of increasing security issues at various airports.
Safety and security is an important element to catch up because it's needed for the travelers as well as the airport operators. And then in order to sustain the development of aviation, especially in Africa, security of airports, passengers and operators is a meaningful, important element, as well as having the technology in place and the latest infrastructure and equipment.
Just to give you a short example, every day we have a lot of people dying in the road by accident, and no one speaks about them because it becomes a day habitude or everything. Everyone knows about that. But if an accident aviation happen, all the world hear about it. This is because aviation is very safe and very secure, and on the other side, everyone knows about aviation. What we are here is to find solution to be more secure, but smarter, in a smarter way.
These discussions brought together the managing directors of civil airports in Africa for an ongoing 69th ACI Africa Regional Conference, which is scheduled to start on Tuesday. Adams Kwizera, RTV News.
Various people from security organs in different African countries say that although recruitment and use of child soldiers by armed forces and armed groups is persistent on the continent, there are measures that are being implemented to combat and eventually eliminate this problem, including the use of the Vancouver Principles that were initiated 5 years ago. Olive Nete has more on that.
The 17 Vancouver Principles are a set of political commitments focused on child protection in peacekeeping in conflicts, and also focus on preventing the recruitment and use of child soldiers by armed forces and armed groups. In a joint discussions with security officials from various African countries, discussions were reiterated on the lessons learned by these countries on the Vancouver Principles. Major General Chaplain Kamis Edward, the Director of Child Rights and Child Protection Directorate in the South Sudan Defense Force, notes that the Vancouver Principles were endorsed in this country last year, and also reiterates on the importance of these principles in his country.
We went ahead by putting the principle into action by screening the opposition forces who are signatory to the revitalized peace agreement. In the cantonments and in the training centers. As a result, something like 48 children were screened in 2 training centers. The Vancouver Principle tells us a lot about the issue of protection of children, the importance of protecting children in South Sudan, especially a country like South Sudan, who had experienced a lot of violence, conflicts for a long time.
The Directorate of the African Center of Excellence, Major General Retired Ferdinand Safari, points out that this kind of armed conflicts gravely affect children.
When we talk about child soldiers, we are not simply talking about a boy with a gun. We are talking about boys and girls that have been recruited and used in support roles, for example, as porters, spies, cooks, sex slaves, human bombs, etc. This country has experienced a genocide against Tutsi in 1994. And Rwanda understands better the devastating effect of children affected by armed conflict.
According to the report of the Special Representative of the Secretary General for Children and Armed Conflict, more than 6,000 children around the world have been forced into military operations. Robert Doyan-Anima, member of the African Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of the Child, notes that although this issue is persistent, everyone's efforts are needed to eradicate this issue.
It's true, there are high numbers of children affected by armed conflict. There are high numbers of children who are taken into places of armed conflict, both directly and indirectly. But be that as it may, I think if we only look at the statistics, we miss the moral authority on how to improve. So I always say, don't only look at the statistics, but also look at what you're doing right. So the answer should be, what can I do as an individual? What can I do as a member of the defense forces? What can I do as a member of the government? What can I do as a member of civil society organizations towards the improvement of the life of this child who is affected by armed conflict? I believe that would take many strides. It would be many strides, but in the right direction.
The Minister of Defense, Major General Albert Murasira, who officially opened the workshop on lessons learned about the Vancouver Principles, noted that the implementation of these principles in various countries would assist in eradicating this issue of using child in armed conflict.
Today, vulnerabilities of children extend beyond the traditional battlefields as a result of transnational criminal networks that recruit children for different purposes. Such include child labor, trafficking, sexual exploitation, indoctrination in armed groups, and involvement in terrorism activities, among others. Therefore, building the global agenda on children, peace, and security requires a deeper understanding and responding to the issues that contribute to increased vulnerabilities of children to extreme violence.
The Vancouver Principles were launched in November 2017 and have so far been endorsed by 17 African countries. Olive Nete, RTV News.
Economists and environmentalists alike have been commending Rwanda for investing in an environmentally friendly economy. We have the details with Betty Mutoni.
In 2022-2023, Rwanda invested 3.2% of the national budget in the Environment Protection Program. And in 2023-2024, the country planned 3.5% of the budget in the environment. Environmental experts appreciate the way the government invests a lot in the environmental protection, as it is seen in different programs.
Ministry of Finance, together with the Ministry of Environment Management, advise other ministries in different departments to conserve environment. That shows that the money put can be increased. Rwanda is doing well because whatever program is going to be launched, the environment protection is considered.
Research made on the air pollution in Rwanda shows that agriculture is responsible for 24% of the air pollution and 14% of the air pollution is from vehicles. Therefore, something must be done in both areas.
What we are requesting as farmers is using every opportunity that the government gave us and benefit from it. And that's why I find you should have gotten 10 tons. You are getting 2 tons. Why can't you cultivate and do whatever possible? Apply fertilizers, good seeds, protect the environment, and if you can't get the harvest, worth 10 tons. The issue of the air pollution caused by vehicles, it is a big issue because we have so many vehicles. That's why we went in America and worked with NASA and gave us the fuel they used. And people here are testifying about it and giving good performance.
This report shows that Rwanda may lose the number of tourists visiting Rwanda between 11 to 20% by 2040.
There is a political will. We have a ministry, a specific ministry for environment protection, etc. We have specific instances like REMA. REMA, so far, according to my best knowledge, they have spent more than $40 million over more than 35 projects just to protect environment, to increase climate resilience, etc., and mitigation. So those initiatives have contributed to creating jobs, but also have put in place a basis or the foundations for future sustainable economic, for the future and a more sustainable economy. And that's really necessary for our future generations, but also for the future of our country in general. Yeah.
Rwanda Environment Management Authority has invested a lot in various programs concerning environmental protection, as an economist expert explains.
While Rwanda is recognized for its nature-based tourism, reduction in natural vegetation contributes to increased runoff and river flows, impacting water yield and increasing landslides and soil erosion, decreasing infiltration and groundwater recharge. These are some of the negative impacts if we don't pay attention to what is happening here. It will be important, even for nature-based tourism, that there is an effort to do two things. First, manage and enhance tourism demand. Second, diversify the tourism asset and the experiences. We also would want the government to focus on increasing the number of arrivals, lengthening visitor stays, diversifying product offering, even in the famous gorilla parks. This will be key.
The World Bank report of 2022-2023 include increasing the budget allocated to protection of environment to at least 80% of the budget of those countries between 2022-2030 in order to reduce the impact of climate change on the economy of those countries to 70% by 2050. Betty Mutoni, RwandaTV News.
It's always a pleasure when you're able to join us. Thank you for taking the time to do so, and goodbye.